As artists, we have a choice to make. Should we narrow our focus to a specific type of artwork, or should we broaden our range of services to reach a much larger market? Greetings everyone, welcome to the underground lair where we bring our creations to life. I'm Scott with Serkworks Art Labs. I'm a professional illustrator, designer, and mad creator because you know what? You have to be a little crazy to do this thing called art. And one of the things that's been crazy throughout my career is just this idea going back and forth in my head of whether I should specialize or whether I should generalize. You know, most of us when we start off in our art career, we're pretty much willing to do anything that's gonna get our foot in the door. A lot of us come out of school or just things that we've practiced along the way. We learn a little bit of everything, how to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And when you're starting off, it's like, yeah, I can do that. I've done logo designs. I can do a logo design for you. Or what? You need me to design a character? I can do that. What? You need me to do a brochure? I'm not crazy about doing brochures. Of course, I don't tell the client that, but no, I'm not too crazy about that, but I can do it because, like I said, anything that's going to get work and start building, building that business that you're starting off as an artist. So I think that's the case with many artists. You guys can let me know if that's true for you. Or maybe you haven't started at all and you're considering this, and that's kind of what I want to talk about. But typically, you know, there is always this, this kind of conflicting idea of whether you should specialize, whether you should generalize, and throughout my career I've gone back and forth with that. Like I said, when I started off, I was doing a little bit of everything, and I think that's probably a good idea for most people because it gives you a chance to kind of hone your skills, practice different types of artwork, and then also learn what you like and what you don't like. So moving forward, you'd be like, well, maybe I don't really like to do that, and maybe I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to take in that kind of work. So many of us artists start out as generalists, and then we sort of move into the role of a specialist. And just because you decide on something specific that you want to do at one point in your career, it doesn't mean that can't evolve or change, and it typically does, especially if you've been doing this as long as I have. And I've gone through, you know, when I decided, yeah, I want to just do everything. There's certain things that I like to do, so I want to specialize. And what I've specialized in throughout the course of my career has changed. I started off when I first decided, yeah, I want to do one particular thing. I want to focus on one thing. That was character design, and the way that I worked that into what my projects and everything was that, you know, I branded myself as Serkworks illustration and design with character. And you know, I would start off usually designing logos because I have a background as, you know, in illustration as well as graphic design, and it was all basically branding, but I branded myself as the guy who could bring branding to you and attach a certain character to that. So if you're looking for a brand that has a character involved, a mascot or whatever, then I'd be the guy you come to, and I would work that into the logo and then figure out how to work that throughout your whole brand. And that's sort of what I specialized in for a long time. And then after a while I noticed that everyone kind of wanted to become a character designer, and there's a lot more of that, and it wasn't so specialized anymore, so I decided to switch. And at that point I just thought, well, what are the things that I like to do? I like to draw robots, I like to draw zombies, I like to draw aliens. What kind of place does all that stuff? And I thought, well, you know what, this clandestine lab where you could be working on creating, you know, working on designing robots or experimenting with alien technology, reverse engineering, all that stuff, or you could be working on some, you know, secret, you know, I don't know, whatever, something that might break out and become a zombie apocalypse. So all the different things I like to create, and that's when I dreamed up the whole art lab. So then it was on from there, and me focusing on more scientific stuff, science-based. If you've gone to my website, you may have, and if you've seen my online store, you'll see there's a lot of geeky science-based products and prints and things like that. So I did that for a little while, and obviously I'm still doing that to a certain extent, but as I started doing YouTube, or as I continued on doing YouTube, I discovered, well, I didn't discover this because this is with me all along, but I'm a big fan of comics, and the more I started talking about comics, and my comics feature those things that I was talking about, so it all sort of wraps into each other. You know, my comics feature zombies for the most part, and then I do all that other stuff as well. But the more I started talking about comics, I just sort of became more of the comics guy, or one of the comics guys, comics education, talking about comics, and then I got into designing digital tools for comic creators, and you know, creating workbooks and all kinds of things that would help out comic creators, and then doing my course Making Comics 101 and all that. So then I sort of slowly shifted in without changing, you know, still the underground layer, still all that stuff, but you know, specializing a little more in the comic making angle of everything. Yeah, so I've always branded myself as a bit of a specialist, and to be perfectly honest, that's been hard for me because, like a lot of artists I would assume, as an early age I was diagnosed with ADHD, and my brain is just all over the place, and I like to do different things. I can't just, you know, be satisfied doing one particular thing. So within whatever specialization that I you know, dive into, there's a lot of different things I do with that. But one of the things that is interesting is Chris Do. I don't know if you follow Chris Do with The Future. Awesome channel, just very knowledgeable guy, super successful in the graphic design space, in the teaching space. I was watching an episode of The Future, and he was talking about specializing versus generalizing, and he was talking about how it's a good idea to specialize externally and then generalize internally. And the idea behind that is that you're forward-facing public personality like mine. You know, I'm the mad scientist, art guy, all of that, and then the stuff that I put out there kind of falls under that, you know, that umbrella. But then, you know, internally, the stuff that I don't put out there is other things that I experiment with or play around with. And what that does is, even though it's not really public facing, that a lot of people don't know about this other stuff that I do sort of behind the scenes, it satiates my appetite as far as learning new things, trying new things out. And one thing that's really helped me recently is something that I've been getting into, one of the businesses I've been getting into with my art, and that is publishing books, particularly low content books, through Amazon or on Amazon through their KDP platform. And if you're not familiar with what low content books are, you've probably seen me talk about my comic book workbooks. So I've got these books here that I do, and this is something I do talk about here because it has to do with comics and everything, and it fits the brand. So I've mentioned these a number of times, but if you're not familiar, like this one, it's just blank comic book pages that you can lay out, and so this is something that I started doing, but it's low content because they're fairly easy to create. And there are a lot of other books out there like this on the market. And I'll get into the reason why I think mine stand out over some of the other ones out there. But I started getting into that, but that's not the only type of book that I've been creating on Amazon or publishing through Amazon. I've been doing all kinds of different things, but they don't necessarily fit with this brand, the Serkworks Art Lab brand. The really cool thing about publishing books on Amazon through KDP is that you can publish under different brands. I've got my account under Scott Serkland, and then you know, I've got my Serkworks Art Labs brand that I publish these books, and then I've got a number of other brands that I can put. So you can create different books with different themes and everything under all these different brands. So that was really cool for me because it gave me the opportunity to do things that, you know, don't necessarily fit what I'm doing here in the art lab, and allowed me to stretch my muscles, my creative muscles rather, and play around with some different things. And the good thing is, because when people search stuff on Amazon, they're searching by keywords. So I don't even have to, well, the idea is that I don't even necessarily have to talk about these books here in the underground layer. They would just be selling because people would be searching a book on a particular subject, and because of the keywords that I embedded in that post or that listing, they would pop up and people would find them and they'd sell. And that works to a certain extent, but what I realized what was happening was the books that I was talking about here in public on YouTube, and I understand not everyone has a platform like this that they can talk about, but those books, they were selling way better than the other books that I was posting, even using all those keywords and everything. So it got me thinking, and then what I started to do, and if you don't have a platform like YouTube or wherever where you can market your books, and you know, I'm focusing specifically on these books because I'm just trying to make a point about generalizing and specializing and all that. But so my, you know, these books, the comic workbooks, they have to do with comics, obviously, and they fit what I'm talking about here on YouTube. I publish these, I talk about these a lot on my on here on the channel, and so they sell pretty well. But then what I started to do is I've got a number of other books. So let me give you an example. So I started publishing these hipster dog books, and I don't talk about them really on this channel because this isn't a hipster dog you know, channel. That's not really what we talk about, even though it's artwork and everything like that. So I started publishing these, and you know, some people were finding them through the keywords and everything, but what I started doing was finding particular breeds, like this one's pugs. So I would reach out to somebody who might have you know, a Facebook page, and all they talk about is pugs, and they're pug fans, and you know, either send them a copy or a link, and then they check it out and they'd be like, oh wow, this is great, and then they would start selling. So I started doing that. So even if you don't have a YouTube channel, you could publish this stuff and reach out to different people. But like I said, I don't usually mention these here on the channel for two different reasons. One is this is a different niche that what I'm doing here on YouTube, and the other one is in KDP, most people don't share the different niches that they're in. If they're doing all these books, they don't share them. It's not something that happens because in this business, people are constantly, you know, sort of ripping people off. Like if somebody's got something that's selling really good, they'll take that and then they'll duplicate it. They'll put a different cover on it and sell those as well, and then try to boost those, whether they're advertising them or whatever. So a lot of people don't talk about the stuff that they publish on KDP. They don't share the different niches that are in. So like right now, and niching, and this is more talking about specializing as well. Sure, I could publish dog books. That's pretty broad. So I niche down. I'm like, well, I'm gonna make a hipster dog book, so people that, you know, are into funny hipster type humor. So I create a book, and then so that's niching down further, and then I niche further down by, you know, I've got the pug books, and then I've got the corgi books, and then I've got French bulldogs, and then I've got, you know, cocker spaniels and Scotty dogs and poodles and what else, and Norwich terriers and Westies and all these different books. So that's another way to niche down. But like I said, people don't typically share this stuff. And one of the things is, and the reason why, and I've been sort of fighting with this as far as well, thinking about specializing, thinking about generalizing, and thinking about all this stuff, and you know, should I talk about this stuff, because this isn't really normally what I talk about here on my channel. And all the while I'm sort of in this conundrum, because meanwhile my girlfriend's like, these are great books. Why aren't you talking about these on your YouTube channel? Why aren't you sharing these? And I went through the same thing I'm talking about. Well, people don't share their niches, and this isn't really what I talk about on YouTube. So I kind of fought that, but then I started to realize a lot of the books, a lot of the reason why people are worried about people stealing their ideas they're publishing on KDP is that most people publishing on Amazon through KDP, they're not artists, all right? They're entrepreneurs, and most of them don't really have a good sense of design, or I mean, some do, but a lot of them, you know, it's kind of like, and these books aren't proven. When you upload a book, you don't know if it's gonna sell or not, all right? It's sort of a gamble. So if you're gonna spend a lot of time, and I spend a lot of time on these books. I mean, if you look at them, I mean, they're coloring books, so it's not quite as involved as what I would do with a comic or whatever, but they're pretty involved, and there's no guarantee. So most people aren't going to spend the amount of time or the amount of money that would take to hire somebody to do this. And you can go on Fiverr, and you can maybe find somebody in a country where their dollar doesn't go as far, and they can get them to do it cheaper, but it's still going to cost money if you're not an artist. I happen to have the advantage, because I am an artist, because I am a graphic designer, that I can do all this stuff myself, so I can take a little bit of a risk on that. But the typical books that people are publishing are simple. They're less complex than this. They're like basically a lot of people just publish notebooks, like it's a lined notebook and they put different covers on it. And if somebody's got a funny phrase or something, if it does really well for them, if they were to share that, it wouldn't be that hard for somebody to duplicate that. But my stuff, it really isn't all that duplicatable. You could do it, but you'd be taking a risk, and it would take a lot of time. So thinking about this, I'm like, you know, maybe my girlfriend's right. Why am I holding this close to the chest? Why am I not talking about this stuff? Because the stuff that I have been talking about on the channel, it tends to sell pretty well. And going back to the things that you like to do, all of these things I'm interested. I do happen to be a dog lover. I do happen to find hipster humor kind of funny. And you know, my comic workbooks, obviously I'm huge into comics. So whether, you know, there are, like I said, there are a number of other people that published, particularly not all, I mean, I've got so many, I branched off. I took one thing that a lot of people were doing was just these blank comic book pages, and I improved on it because I was looking at these and I'm like, no real comic book artist would use these. They look like they were published by somebody who had really no familiarity with comics. So the books that I publish are all things that I know about and I love, and because of that, it goes back to that specialization, that being an expert at something. Because there's something I love, my books are going to look better in this particular space than most of the other stuff out there, because I'm a comic book artist. I know what comic book artists want. I know what looks great for comic book artists and what looks kind of hokey and just not great. So I kind of went, you know, heavy in on these, and then I branched off and I started doing other versions like thumbnail guides, and then, you know, some pages with sound effects, and I did, you know, hero design templates where you can design your own heroes. So I've got like, there's like, I don't know, I've got over 20 of these. I don't know how many different kinds there are. And then I did some manga versions. But this is all stuff that I'm somewhat of an expert at. So, and just like other things, like, you know, and certain things maybe, you know, I'm not necessarily an educator, but, you know, one of the things that I really encourage is just for kids to kind of follow their dreams. I mean, I followed my dreams. I wanted to do art as a kid, and I grew up, and that's what I wanted to do. And with that philosophy, then I started creating these coloring books. So these are, you know, when I grow up, I can be anything, an inspirational coloring book for boys, and then another one for girls. And it's just got all the different, you know, again, these aren't something that anyone, you know, most people that are doing stuff on KDP, they're just using clip art and everything. And when you're just borrowing stuff from clip art, everything's not going to match. It's going to be different styles. So most people aren't going to take the time to actually hire an illustrator or illustrate all this stuff themselves. So, you know, that's why at this point, I'm not really worried about sharing this kind of stuff online. But so yeah, so I've designed all these, and because it's something I'm passionate about, that shows through. That shows as me as sort of an expert. The other thing I talk about is zombies. So I created a zombie, you know, this is what I'm talking about as far as something that could be easily duplicated. This is basically just one page that repeats through the whole thing, but this is like a daily log. So if you were in a zombie apocalypse, you know, day 1, day 2, and you go through and you basically keep track. It's like a daily journal. So publishing something like this, now somebody could come along and, oh, that's a good idea, but are they going to be as good at me as laying this out? Are they going to have, you know, as nice of a cover to design and all that stuff? I don't know. It's possible, but you know, a lot of people, they just don't share that stuff. And then there's certain things that you don't have to be a total expert on. For instance, I published these astrology charts, and again, they're just, you know, they're just these different charts, but I designed them really well, and you know, I referred to some experts. So my girlfriend knows a little more about this stuff than I do, and I talked to her, and you know, and I shared it, and and just so you know, if you don't know about a certain thing, you can sort of, as long as you still have a passion for it, because I thought it'd be interesting to design this, and you know, and I'm happy with the way the design came out, and I referred to people that knew a little more about this. So, you know, definitely you don't have to, if you're specializing, I mean, you can you know, you can go a little broad with certain things as long as you're getting expert opinions and everything, and as long as, like, again, I think that you just have a passion for whatever you're creating. So just not like, well, I'll just do whatever just to make a buck. And then of course, like I said, when you're starting out, it might be a little different story. You may have to do that in order to, you know, start bringing in money until you get to the point where you're doing things that you like to. But it's also not a bad idea, and I would encourage people to, you know, when they're putting their work out there, there on social media. Put out the stuff that you want to do, because naturally that's the work you're going to get. If you're just throwing anything out there because you think it's going to sell or whatever, then people are going to be coming at you with, oh, well, do this, even though that might not be, can you do this, even though that might be one of the things that you're not really crazy about. So I am definitely a big fan of specializing. And even when you're starting out, I may have done things a little differently, and I may have started to specialize right out the gate with, this is the stuff that I like to do, and then just, hopefully that type of work comes in, and then you can be known for that. So yes, so now I've talked about a few of these books, and I sort of tested the water a little bit on my newsletter by posting some things that weren't really necessarily comic oriented, just to see what kind of response, and some of those, the sales did start to pick up on some of those. Like I've got this one here, the gross food coloring book, and it's basically, I just had fun because I'm also a big fan of the old wacky packages. I don't know if you remember those trading cards, but just those kind of, and like Garbage Pail Kids and all that. So doing something along those lines with the, just different crazy gross food that kids will like and color in. So, I put little links to these in some of my newsletters, and the sales started to pick out. And then I've got other things. I thought this was just an idea I had, but Yo Mama jokes. So I took all these different Yo Mama jokes that I just found online, and then I started to illustrate them and made them available to color. And I'll leave links to some of these, if any of these things. I know Christmas is coming up. If you've got ideas, that these might be gifts for somebody, we'll put links to some of those. And even like with the dog books, these dog books that I did, I started doing a whole line of Christmas dog books. I don't have any with me to share, but maybe I'll throw some of them up here. But yeah, great stocking stuffers, things like that. So you might see me starting to share more of this stuff on my YouTube channel. It just depends. So does that mean that now publicly I'm more of a generalist? I don't know. I think really it's all about balance. I mean, I think I've done a pretty good job of creating a brand, and I've set that up in a certain way so people know me as, oh, he's the guy with the green lab coat and all that. But I don't know. The other thing is, because I'm in a different position, and what I'm talking about, it isn't like one size fits all right? It depends. You kind of have to make your own decision on whether you want to specialize in something, whether you want to generalize, based on where you are. I'm just kind of putting this information out here for you to think about, and then make your own decision, because the situation that I'm in, I'm not really actively trying to bring in client work. I'm sort of trying to move away from that in favor of doing things that I like to do on my own. Like all these different books. I am behind the scenes creating ideas for all these different books and publishing them, and because of that, a lot of them, I don't necessarily have to get out here and talk about them, and they don't have to actually fit in the brand, because they can sell by their own with keywords and things like that. And it's really about me at this point in my career. It's about me building like these different passive income streams, whether that's the books I'm publishing on Amazon, whether it's my digital products, and kind of moving away to a certain extent from doing client work. So really, I can kind of write my own ticket. That's what I'm trying to do. So that puts me in a little different position. But it really depends on where you are in your career, whether you're just getting started, if you feel like, well, maybe I need to kind of take everything that comes my way. And then sometimes, a lot of times people will come to an artist, and if they just know that you're an artist, they'll ask if you can do something that you may not even particularly want to do, and then you can make the decision, well, yeah, I can do that, yeah, I'll take that on, maybe I need the money or whatever. But that doesn't mean you can't put yourself out there as a specialist, putting out there the kind of stuff you want. Because I think, like I said, I think the doing what you like to do, what you love to do, I think that shows through. People see that, and because it's something you like to do, you're probably gonna be a little better at it, you're gonna enjoy it more, that's gonna show through. People are going to probably look to you to do that type of work. So like I said, it's not one size fits all. That's what I wanted to talk about, the benefits to specializing, some of the benefits to maybe being a little more of a generalist. In my experience, I tend to gravitate more towards more of a specialist. But like I said, you can change along the course of your career to specialize in other things, and sometimes sometimes opportunities just present yourself, or somehow you become known as a person that does this. The more I was doing comics and talking about comics now, it just sort of gradually, that was just something that happened. And now that's really one of the main things I talk about is creating comics, and it kind of boiled over into, now I'm creating digital products for comic creators. Now I'm creating comic workbooks and all that stuff. So, and I'm fine with that because I love comics, but it depends on what you're looking for. And so, you know, take all that, make your own decision, and hopefully you'll have made the right choice. I just want to arm you with the knowledge to kind of come up with that on your own. And like I said, if you're interested in any of this stuff, I'll try to leave some links in this video to some of those books. Make great stocking stuffers and everything like that. But yeah, think about it, think about generalizing, think about specializing, and think about what you want to do. And I will see you guys later. That is all. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Also, you can follow me at Serkworks on social media. And now you can support the work that I do on Patreon. Do you like making comics? Then go to Serkworks.com and pick up the Comic Maker Starter Kit. It's packed full of fonts, brushes, templates, and more. And best of all, it's totally free.